to take us through today's session.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you all for joining. I see there's 91 participants listening in. I do see a few folks from National Capital Area, Lou and Ernie. I'm sure there are others. I just want to welcome everyone and thank you for taking a little bit of time with us today to talk about how to recruit and maintain an effective local federal coordinating committee. I've been involved with the LFCC in the NCA since the early 2000s in some capacity or another. And I think we've built some tools that have actually helped us engage members. So there's a lot for folks to do at different times of the year. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about what we've done. We're one model. It's different in the National Capital Area or in areas where there are huge densities of federal employees. I understand that. And what works here may not work everywhere, but I think there are some things that we do with our LFCC beyond recruitment that actually are tips that may be helpful to other committees in organizing how you conduct your business and work and how you recruit people who are the right folks to help you with different activities that are necessary for the CFC. Let's go to the next slide, please. So of course we know the combined federal campaigns, local governments from our old timers to now, there have been some big differences in terms of the role of the LFCC. Prior to the process where we have an OC, when we used to have PCFOs, there used to be a lot of work in the LFCCs over the selection of the vendor that would serve as PCFO. Now that that's handled by OPM, there's sort of a different perspective of what we need to do. And I think with any LFCC also there needs to be a real focus on what the local committee wants to do in terms of managing how their campaign activities roll out in the region or the area where they're at. Let's go to the next slide. So our LFCC governance functions are laid out by OPM, but we also include those in a set of bylaws, which we're happy to share with you that the LFCC adopted a few years ago and that we periodically modify. But our view, our role is to provide oversight of CFC NCA's operations, making sure that we're accountable to our donors, to OPM, and to the campaign. To accomplish this, we help in the selection of the OC as OPM needs assistance in that process. We review all financial operations, even those that are reported to OPM. We look at all the invoices, make sure they're accurate. We have an entire process that does that. And we look at how the OC is spending budgets that are allocated for NCA activities on a monthly basis through our LFCC meetings to make sure we're our comfort level with how they're actually executing on those dollars that have been provided for that. So that's actually a big process. And we actually have a couple individuals on the LFCC that specifically help us with that have procurement background. We conduct appraisals of OC performance. We do that at every single LFCC meeting. And of course, we do some narrative recommendations to OPM at the end of each CFC cycle year. So for example, there are requirements that we have for activities that happen every month and milestones that the OC needs to do. The OC gives us a report of their progress, whether or not it's complete in process. If they didn't meet a deadline, we use a simple red, yellow, green scale to do that. And then the LFCC every month as we get that report takes I think someone's I'm getting a lot of feedback. So if you're not muted, please mute yourself. The LFCC at all of our meetings then rates the progress and performance of the OC and meeting all of those required activities that they need to conduct under the OC contract. We review and make sure that the outreach, fundraising, and marketing initiatives that come from the National Marketing Outreach Coordinator all work and don't need any further slight adjustments so that they speak better to the audience that we deal with our activities in the fall campaign. We also look at all the marketing tweets, and social media posts, and all of that the week before they go out, just to make sure they're still relevant, that the timing is right for those, and that they speak to NCA employees. So we do that on an ongoing basis, but we do spend time looking at the proposed marketing campaign, provide feedback through ROC to NMOC so that we're engaged in the process on the front end for that. We, again, I think I mentioned how we measure performance of the OC, but also we are very engaged in working with the OC for a year-end report that not only serves what they need to give to Tony and OPM, but also serves as a roadmap for things we don't want to forget about between campaigns. So as we complete the annual report, putting in the annual report things that need to roll forward to the coming year so that we don't forget about those. Our annual report that goes to OPM is actually cleared and approved by our LFCC after it's drafted by the OC for their activities. So there really is a lot of collaboration in how we do that. And then also we make sure that we're maintaining a functional LFCC through recruitment, orientation for LFCC members, and assigning them to committees as quickly as possible, and also creating, as people leave the LFCC, new opportunities to lead committees. So we're also focused on continually pulling people in that have an opportunity to serve in leadership roles on the campaign and on the LFCC moving forward. Are there any quick questions for this part on governance? Because some of this really it's laid out in the regs, so we didn't pull this out of the air, although we did make sure that we maintained an oversight role for the LFCC, even as we transition to the OC framework that we're under now.
I do not have any questions in the chat yet, Vince.
And Tony, if I've been in the LFCC for a long time and you call me Doc Micone, you're probably Doc Tony. So let's go to the next slide. So this is for our LFCC, and every LFCC is very different. Your LFCC should reflect the needs of your locality where you provide guidance and oversight to the campaign. There's no magic number that necessarily should be followed from what we do in the NCA, but our bylaws require that we have 9 to 25 members. We try and keep it under 20 so that it doesn't become overly yieldy to pull folks together. Our qualifications in our bylaws is that our members must reflect the diversity of the federal workforce. When I first came on the LFCC, it was largely SES members. We moved very quickly away from that. We have bargaining unit members. We have members at different grade levels. We have individuals at times who are in uniform. We try very much to reflect federal employees in the area and get a microcosm of voices that can help us make sure that we're doing right in running the campaign. We make sure that we look for skills also: executive leadership, financial management, audit, IT, employee communications, public information, events management, protocol, human capital, and law. We actually in our LFCC have a general counsel who helps make sure if there are any legal questions that come up, that we have an in-house voice as we work with OPM and working through all of those issues. It's been very, very, very helpful for us. Our terms of office are 3 years, and they're staggered so that not everyone leaves all at the same time. And we're pretty much a stickler about participation. So we're fine with excused absences if people can't make meetings, but if we have a number of unexcused absences, that's an automatic dismissal because we just want to make sure that we have as many engaged people as possible who are on the LFCC. Let's go to the next slide. So what do? We have what are called LFCC operations. So first of all, our elections coincide with the fiscal year. That's our year that we use, not the CFC campaign, but the fiscal year. We have co-chairs, 2 co-chairs, a secretary and a general counsel. The secretary is the first reviewer of our minutes and all of our documents that go out. One of the things we do for all of our meetings, we work with our OC. Our board books for our LFCC members go out a week before every meeting. So people can review the financials, they can review the agenda, and they know what's coming, and all the information that they need to act on is generally in that board book that goes out, unless there's something that we let them know is going to come a little bit later. We manage our activities through committees. So we have an awards and recognition committee that reviews on an annual basis our criteria for our in-house awards, and also reviews all of the award nominations and makes recommendations to the full LFCC. We have an outreach committee that helps us with particular categories of outreach. Right now, we're focused on annuitants, building a stronger campaign with congressional employees, and building a stronger campaign with employees of the courts. Because, of course, the CFC is one of the few activities that all branches of the federal government work together. So we're trying as we can to pull in more than just the executive branch into the campaign and build active campaigns. And that's hard. That takes a lot of work. We have a training committee that reviews the training we do for our key workers, how we customize it in the NCA, and also works with us on developing a training for our loaned executives. After that training is conducted, this committee will go in with our loaned executives and staff, LFCC members, campaign managers. They'll assess the campaign and make recommendations for the following year. So it's a continual cycle in what they do. Our marketing and communications committee is very busy, really right after we get the National Marketing Outreach Committee's proposal for the marketing campaign and how we're going to execute that. They review the overall campaign, make any recommendations, and then we then are able and ready to execute on that. We have a local application committee that reviews all the local applications. That's guided by our very own Curtis, who works with LEs, volunteers, former campaign managers, LFCC members to handle that entire activity. And finally, we have an executive committee that has the chairs of various committees and a few at-large members that help us manage all of our activities. So I had 15 minutes. I see I'm right on 2:15. I shared a lot of information. I'll stay on till the very end to answer any questions that may come up. But it's now my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Ward from the Desert Southwest CFC, who is going to take us on the next part of our journey.
Thank you so much. So I'm still serving on the Alaska LFCC to help them transition through another year since I just moved from there a year ago. And I'm serving on the Desert Southwest LFCC, and that's about all they have in common. To set up what it looks like, let me provide you some background. Other than the overseas campaign, Alaska serves the largest geographical area. Alaska has 31,000 federal employees and about 40 campaign coordinators and 7 active LFCC members. Desert Southwest covers Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and 18 counties in Texas, has around 145,000 employees and approximately 148 campaign coordinators and 7 active LFCC members. The goal in all is to have enough LFCC members for us to not only make effective decisions, but prevent workloads such as charity application reviews from being burdensome. There can actually be a lot of work and review and a lot of decisions being made by the LFCCs. And even if we're not in the NCA, which is a huge campaign, Alaska has just as many decisions to make most of the time. When recruiting members, there are several things to consider. Most important is to work on recruitment for DoD and USPS employees. We collectively are working very hard to encourage LFCC membership of our large donor accounts, and they are all typically the largest. Our OCs can run reports that identify the top accounts, and those are the ones you really want to recruit from. Not to say that representation from the smaller agencies can't be of importance. However, the influence and reach of an agency with 25 employees is much different than one with 5,000 employees. I'm much more in the weeds with the Alaska campaign since I've been with them much longer. Their top accounts include National Park Service, Federal Aviation Administration, multiple DoD installations, U.S. Postal Service, U.S. Forest Service, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection. In Alaska, everything's divided up into 3 major cities, Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau, and we try to ensure that we have representation for each of those cities each year. However, I'm now working on the Desert Southwest side. Being a prior Air Force member, I am now working on recruitment for the Desert Southwest LFCC. It takes time, patience, and persistence. Fortunately, we are getting new LFCC members, which is exciting, and it's great to have new members. While Alaska has an FEA, the Desert Southwest has the ability to communicate and recruit from the area's FEBs. FEBs are not only crucial to recruit from, but to ensure that there is consistent messaging communicated across the board. Traditionally, LFCC members were once agency director level employees. Now, not so much. As I'm a GS8, I've not only been on the LFCC for many years, but I've also served as chairman. So it's not just upper management anymore. Like Vince was talking about, there's an importance to have some variety and different backgrounds. Through my years in Alaska, I was able to travel through and conduct training to coordinators and key workers. Even in the pandemic last year and living in Arizona, I was able to conduct some virtual key worker training sessions. In the Desert Southwest, some duties, which include training, are conducted by the outreach coordinator via Zoom and Teams to reach the most people in the most effective way possible, as traveling to many cities is prohibitive by time and budget. So while there are many LFCC differences amongst the zones, each have their own uniqueness. Each zone needs an LFCC, and each zone needs an LFCC. At the end of the week, when the recordings are saved, you'll also have access to recruitment letters, an example to work from that I have provided. So you'll have access to that to work with your LFCC and the FEBs and however you'd like to coordinate recruitment. Most recently, I reached out to the wing commander at Luke Air Force Base and was able to provide this letter. Took a couple of weeks and was able to get a new LFCC member from Luke Air Force Base, which was hugely important because we didn't have any active duty military people. So now that I've talked really super fast, I apologize. I covered a whole bunch of information. Are there any questions as far as recruitment?
I have not received any in the chat. Tony, have you?
No, I haven't seen any. But Jen, you talk as fast as a New Yorker. Are you sure you're from Alaska?
I apologize. I had it all typed out and ready to go, but yes, I get nervous and I talk really fast. So it was easier to just have it all typed out and ready to go. Most important thing out of all of this when I'm done talking so fast is to just work with your LFCC on recruitment. It's really critical. Alaska can't do it with 3 people. Neither can Desert Southwest. And it's not just about how large your zone is, but there's so many decisions and opportunities and discussions that go on within the LFCC during the campaign and without an active campaign going on. There's still decisions being made. So it's just important to get your recruitment going.
So Jen, I do have a question for you, because you're a great example of, how people get involved in the CFC and want to stay involved. Once you get into this program, you reap the benefits and rewards of being part of it. So, it's very honorable that you continued your service when you moved from Alaska. And I'm curious to know how you went about getting on the Desert Southwest LFCC. Did you reach out to that committee? Did you work through the OC? How did that happen?
Fortunately, there with the OPM website, givecfc.org, there's resources there that you can find the LFCC members. I have a very close relationship with our OC and was able to recruit from them and say, hey, I'd like to become a member of their LFCC. Can you give me a contact for them? And I was able to get in that way.
Excellent. Good. So hopefully, others on the call, if you're transferring to somewhere else, Jen's a great example of what you can do as well to continue your service with the program. All right. Thank you. So we're going to move to our next speaker, and we have Terry Morgan, who is an LFCC member from the Heart of the Midlands CFC. So Terry, take it away.
Good afternoon. I apologize, first of all. When I came in, my camera was working fine, and now all of a sudden it just went dark. So if you want an image of what I look like, I wear round glasses and I have a very white bushy beard, so you can kind of picture Santa Claus. And that's kind of a lead in because I do play Santa Claus on a CFC event every December. But that's a very good image. If you want to picture Santa Claus while I'm talking, that works perfect. So my name is Terry Morgan, and as Curtis said, I'm from the Heart of the Midlands. I do sit on the LFCC. I've been a member of the LFCC since 2012. I was a member of the board prior to the transition. And I'm also a member of the Omaha-Lincoln Federal Executive Association Executive Committee. And that's why I'm here today, is discuss how you can work with your federal executive boards, your federal executive associations, and your federal executive councils. If everybody can go down to the bottom and you see the reactions, can I get a thumbs up or thumbs down from people that have heard of a federal executive board or federal executive association or federal executive council? All right, thank you. Federal executive boards were established in 1961, and they were established as a forum for communication and collaboration between the multiple different federal agencies. We're federal agencies, but we all have a different mission. So they were established to work together on basically a common vision, to communicate a message and to collaborate together, not only to recognize the different federal agencies, but to move towards a common goal as far as professional development, exercises, getting benefit information out, and that's just a very short list of what they do. Federal executive associations and federal executive councils are lower level local organizations supporting these same ideas. FEAs and FECs, hopefully, I know a few of them and align with the federal executive boards, but that's not necessarily true. You want to tap in, and I'll type in the website for the federal executive boards, and then also there's a tab called locations, and you can click on and pull up all the federal executive board locations, click on their webpage, and then you can check. Some of them actually show the federal executive associations that fall under there, and then some of them basically, for example, ours, we have our own website. It's not connected with the Greater Kansas City Federal Executive Board, so you could just go into and Google Omaha Lincoln FEA, and it would pop up. If you go in and Google Federal Executive Associations, there's probably 4 or 5 of them that'll actually pop up under that. So you can either Google Federal Executive Association, or again, like I said, I'll give you the website, and you can go into the Federal Executive Board, click on a location, and then go under their format and see if they don't have the FEA or the FEC located there. Again, most of these organizations have existed and have been established for a while, 1961. They have a vast network of agency and local community contacts. So not just do they have a network of the agency contacts, they also have a network and contact information for a lot of community related local governments, charities, and different other quasi-official type government agencies that they deal with on a day-to-day basis that you may need to know or could help you at your level. We definitely recommend that you coordinate with your federal executive board, because most of them already have a CFC committee established. And they can help you, along with the outreach coordinator, figure out how to get a plan developed, provide some background information, kind of just give you some guidance. The federal executive boards and the federal executive associations can also help you get the CFC message out. They have a vast network that they can get your message, and also help you advertise if you want to sponsor, if you're having a certain event and it's not just directed towards your agency, it's more related to like a community event where you will welcome and invite some outside agencies. That's a good point of contact to get contacts, if you don't already have them, of the other agencies in the area that you can send an invite to. You might want to consider partnering with the Federal Executive Board or Federal Executive Association or Council on a CFC event. A lot of times, like I said, they may plan a separate CFC event that falls under. Example is the Greater Kansas City and the St. Louis FEB have kind of a competitive event every year, and the loser will actually get a pie in the face. There's other federal executive boards that do similar competition and combined events. And they've also in the past years invited the lower level FEAs and FECs to participate. So this may be a way of also your agency finding out the information and kind of partnering in, have a meeting with your smaller, especially if you're a smaller agency, have a meeting, talk about CFC, and then connect to that particular event. There's lots of activities, and then you can participate in that. Also may be a way of you aligning with an FEA or an FEC because you're in that particular area. You can also use their network to find other agencies and partner with them. And the reason I'm talking about agencies partnering and doing cross-zone events is it kind of started with COVID. COVID kind of forced us to do that since we went virtual. We've actually, it was the first year, and it was at one of our LFCC meetings that we kind of, the discussion just came up, hey, we'd like to do something, you know, since COVID shut down, a lot of people aren't going to be able to take pictures with Santa Claus and meet Santa Claus this year. And I kind of piped up and said, well, I own my own Santa suits. I am a Santa. Why don't we consider doing an event that way? And it basically just took off from there. Probably within about 3 weeks, we went ahead and got it planned, and we did the first Zooming with Santa. And it was across zone. We had agency employees call in from Michigan, I think Georgia, California, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Alaska. And it was very successful. In fact, we've continued it from that particular year. So that's, and I know there's other agencies out there that have done the cross zone CFC events, and they've been very, very successful. It's a great way for a new campaign manager to kind of tag along and see what works and won't work for them, and then give you some ideas to kind of do your own individual event. So definitely reach out. And like I said, I would type into the chat where you can find the FEBs. And it's that simple. It's www.feb.gov. And then once you get into that site, you click on the locations tab, and then that'll pull you up all the locations of every FEB that we have. And then you can click on their website. You can also see who the executive director and the president of the FEB. And if you've never contacted them and it's something new, this is a good starting point for you. I'd reach out to the executive director, and they will be more than happy to talk to you and give you some advice. So at this time, I'll open it up to any questions.
I don't see any in the chat yet. Does anybody have any for Terry? Okay, and we're gonna have a Q&A towards the end of this as well. So if you think of something, hold on to it and we'll come back. We're gonna go to our final presenter, who really needs no introduction because she's been such a huge part of the program for many years, and continues to be part of the program even though she retired. So she's going to give us a different perspective on continuing to serve the program in retirement. So everybody, please welcome Linda Siegle.
Hello. Yes, you all thought I was gone, but I just keep turning back up. So yeah, my name is Linda Siegle. I am on the LFCC of the Chesapeake Bay Area, CFC. Have been for the most part, better part of 18 years. I started as a loan executive in 2005. And I am the prime example of what Vince described as the let's pull them in and then move them through the process. I went from being an LE to reviewing applications. Then I was recruited to be on the LFCC. I left the room one day and was voted in as vice chair. Not really sure how that happened. So, you know, quick word of advice, don't leave the room and leave a quorum in the room. Yeah, so then I became the LFCC chair, and I retired in 2018. Stayed on a little bit as a consultant, left for a little bit, and then got recruited back a couple years ago to help with application training again, and then that is just sucked right back in. I also worked with the national committee for a number of years for this training. So this is really freaking me out a little bit doing it live. I used to do it in person, or doing it virtually. I used to do it in person. It seemed much easier then. But I think it's awesome that the training is back. So thanks to everybody that made this happen. It's really a great way to connect with other campaigns forge partnerships, share information, and really optimize the campaign across the whole country and overseas. I also want to reiterate there's a lot of things that my colleagues have already talked about that I'm going to kind of reiterate. So we're going to jump on Vince's whole diversity of the LFCC. One of the things I always tried to do when I was an LFCC chair was to have the LFCC reflect as much as possible the personnel that were in that campaign region. So things like, military, civilian, postal, seasoned employees, new employees. For us, we also have rural and urban. So we have the Baltimore area, which is very active, lots of agencies, lots of large agencies. And then we also have very rural areas. So I lived in the very urban area and moved in retirement to the very rural area of Western Maryland, which is a completely different animal from how the campaign is run in the city area. So for me, retirees add kind of a new layer of structure to the LFCC. It's been an interesting ride so far. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits and the challenges that I think have the way it's helped with our LFCC. And as you can probably tell, my first challenge is doing a virtual presentation. So I'm going to have you bear with me on all that. So let's talk about the benefits first, or what I think are the benefits. I've been really lucky that the LFCC membership that was in place before I came back has been super supportive and very understanding of my gaps here and there. But let's talk about the benefits. For one thing, not all retirees, but a lot of us have time. So there's a lot of things I wanted to do on the LFCC when I was, kind of doing it as in other duties as assigned. Being a retiree gives me a lot more flexibility, a lot more time. I got to do a lot of applications this year because I had the time, and it's winter and it snows up here. So that works out great for our applications committee. I'm also it also helps that I have extra time to do things like, I shouldn't say the mundane tasks, but I, help with drafting memos, researching, things like that. We have a very small but mighty LFCC right now. And I hope that opens them up to do other things that are much bigger priorities, or where they need to be, front and center. I can kind of help with a lot of the background stuff. The virtual thing has really helped because, as I said, I moved 3 hours away from the hub of where our CFC is. So this whole virtual thing works out really great for me. So I don't have to be in person at meetings. When I do get down that way, we do meet in person, which is great. But I can, pretty much work from anywhere and talk to anyone from anywhere. So another interesting piece in this that's been for me, everybody knows I'm relatively vocal. So the whole I hear you laughing. So the whole retiree marketing thing, I was so excited to see Keith talk yesterday about how the retiree giving has increased. I'm going to, give the credit to some degree to some of the extra marketing that I saw this past year. The first couple of years I was a retiree, the only direct marketing I saw regarding CFC was at the bottom of another email. OPM would send us, here's the information on your next cost of living. Well, a lot of people, that, and then the CFC message was at the bottom of that. So, I don't know about anybody else, but, I want to know what I'm going to get in my next cost of living. I'm not necessarily reading all the way to the bottom beyond that. So the last year, especially, there were some direct messaging about CFC, which was great. So I have lots more ideas on how to get to retirees, but that's another session. But there are I think there's lots of other ways. I'm so excited to see everyone talking about getting to retirees where they are, because it's not just through, OPM or through our military pay system. There's a lot of other places to get to us and find us. So another benefit, and I'm going to call it a double-edged sword because it's the institutional knowledge. So I've been around for a long time. So I have, and my LFCC partners really indulge me in what I playfully call my back in the day talks, where we're talking about something and it's very different from what it was before under the old regulations. So I just have to, I think it's great that I can provide almost a bridge. So we do have some LFCC members that have only been in the CFC since the regulation changes. So there's lots of times I can say, well, the way it got there was like this. This is what used to happen. This is what happens now. And this is how it happened and how it evolved that way. One of the things we're working on now is rebooting our loan executive program. We haven't had a loan executive program for a couple years. So I like to think that I helped with that because I was a loan executive and ran that program for a number of years. It was easy for me, to go back in my archives and kind of put together the LE position description and help get us moving back to where we were before with the LE program. So yeah, and like I said, it's a double-edged sword because I have to be careful because I don't want to be the back in my day we walked uphill both ways to school kind of thing. But it was a very different world. People don't want to hear me talk about my how we used to haul materials in my little Honda Fit that had 200,000 miles on it by the time I was done running all over the place and also doing paper applications. So my application committee got to hear about how we used to cart boxes of paper applications around. And I will say the new application process compared to what we used to do, awesome, so much better. So those are kind of what I view as the benefits. So now let's talk about the challenges. One of the challenges is I am a distance from the hub. I am 3 hours away from the center of our campaign. So that does make it challenging sometimes. I would like to be there more in person and be able to do things to help support the campaign more. And I can't necessarily do that at the drop of a hat. Another challenge is what I call my knowledge gaps. So there's a lot of things that have changed. I was off of the LFCC for a couple years, so there are definitely things that changed from the time I left to the time I came back. The pandemic being the big one. So there are times when my LFCC partners have to say, it's not how that happens anymore, or this is the way this works. Another challenge I have is I am not in a federal building anymore. And in rural Maryland, in Western Maryland, there are not many federal agencies. So I have a very limited view of what's happening in federal agencies right now. I know with the pandemic, a lot of things changed, the cultures, a lot of people are working at home, all those kinds of things. So I can't necessarily be a super help when they're talking about how do I get the employees inside of federal agencies, because my knowledge of that just really doesn't exist anymore. So that whole vibe, I don't know what that whole vibe is now. I just think it's awesome that so many people are working at home. When I was in LE, working at home was like a big deal. I mean, so, looking at how the world has changed is just crazy. So last but not least for me is the technological challenges. I mean, Curtis can tell you, I sent him my bullets just in case, because again, my internet is not always reliable. And I'm impressed that you can hear me and my camera's working, and that I've been able to do this without sitting and reading a piece of paper. So so that's just kind of a feel for, like I said, it's been really interesting coming back. I've loved it. It's great because as a retiree, I can do it on my time, kind of on my schedule. And it's just been a really, really great experience. I hope that I've been able to bring something to the LFCC. I'm super excited about seeing the retirees being codified with the regulations. And then, like I said, also super excited to see future marketing for retirees. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, throw it back to Curtis.
Does anybody have any questions for Linda or even for OPM about retirees and LFCC participation?
So Curtis and Linda, we do have a question in the chat about what are some of the other ways that we might
I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, you keep going in and out.
That's what I observed myself. Keep
Sure.
bringing up for some reason.
I'll try again. So the question from Chris Merlo, what are some of the other ways to
What else do you again, Tony?
I can take that, Tony. Hey, we're trying to again focus on retirees because we have a large base of retirees here in the Ohio area, especially around Dayton. And you're right, we're having a rough time connecting to those versus like what you said in OPM. So we're looking for any advice of how to connect to those. Like I said, our biggest thing is, we're putting signs up at the hospital, because it's military retirees. We have commissaries, but I know that doesn't catch everybody. But again, how do we get connections and get word out to those folks? We're just having a tough time doing that. Over.
So can I jump in a little bit on that? So there are a lot of agencies. I don't know how a lot of other agencies are made up. The agency I retired from actually has a retiree society that I could join when I left my agency called the Phoenix Society. So that's one way. If there are societies or other professional societies that folks belong to. I mean, I know there's a lot of things like that depending on your agency or department. So that's definitely one way. Another way that I get messaging, I will tell you, we had a credit union that was connected with our agency. That credit union was always a great partner. And as a retiree, I remain a member of that credit union. So just some random thoughts that I have.
Another thing that we did in Alaska was public radio. We had a list of approximately 15 radio stations that were free, and our OC did a public broadcast message that was like 15 to 30 seconds, and it went out over the radio for free.
Let me add to that. I think ROC would say I have 2 words with communication: earned media. Get me out somewhere free. So we do Federal News Radio usually does a couple of bits. We've been on TV before for the news, which actually when we've been on the news, we've done it around a volunteer project with feds. And I will tell you, those days we saw contributions spike. We also really focus on trying to get some coverage, any coverage we can get. And we get some media, we get some radio coverage around Giving Tuesday and around Thanksgiving. And also we do see increases. And frankly, sometimes I'm shocked. I'll get like someone who will say, hey, Vince, I just listened to your podcast about CFC. And I was like, that's still out there. So this stuff helps. And this is all really where an LFCC is important. This is all local stuff. So we have the contacts in NCA, but you're not going to get those. Even within our region, you're probably not going to get that in Baltimore, even though we're in the same area. So this is something where LFCCs are very important. And that's also why we really spend a lot of time looking at the social media, because there might be something going on locally, which means that a particular tweet or social media post at that time may actually have a negative impact on your CFC campaign. So, as Tony knows, there are times when we modify things. Sometimes we even go back to OPM and say, we're not sending this out at this point. This is why. And a lot of it is just really, we have the ears and eyes of what's going on locally. And so we're hyper focused on protecting the brand of CFC so that we continue to build donors. So earned media is very important. Paid media only gets you so far. Paid media also needs to be very strategic with your OC. You need to figure out, with limited dollars, how can you get the best bang for your buck? So we're doing a lot of social media pushes right now, which are cheaper for us. And we're doing it like you might get on your phone. If you're reading, say, an email or some news, if you're in a zone where we tag you because federal employees go there, like Metro Center, all of a sudden your news feed may have CFC that pops up. And so we've worked a lot of those issues, and you can reach out through Lou or Ernie if you want more information on what we do for earned media. But I'll tell you, as LFCC members, we are the best spokespersons for the campaign. And that's why diversity, equity, and inclusion on our LFCCs are important. And that's why it's important to have focused people who are focused on working with the OC to get the word out beyond emails. I mean, we know click-throughs with emails are lame at this point. We got to reach people the other way. And by the way, we old timers, we're not going to reach newer employees the way that we did it before. I mean, you may as well do snail mail on your old pager because that's going to be about as effective as you are getting people to contribute that way. Also, as a note, as LFCCs, you should look and see, does it make sense for a couple zone LFCCs to combine so that you get the benefits of a larger LFCC? Because there's a lot to do. We could not do what we do without the 15 people, and we're in NCA. So frankly, when I hear like there's LFCCs with 2 to 3 people, I think about you a lot and I want to help. If there's agencies in your regions, if there's someone from labor there and we need to find a labor member to serve on your LFCC, shoot me an email. Can't make any promises that I'll make it happen right away, but I'll sure work to find somebody because you can't do this alone. And the more LFCC members that amplify the importance of this, the more people will return to giving. So absolutely critical. And why I brought that up? Well, Linda and the Baltimore campaign, Chesapeake, we're beginning a process over 2 years where we're going to merge because we believe it will be better for us to message to employees and a better use of federal resources and volunteers to get all the work done that we need to do for the campaign. And we are really excited about that. And our committee structure helps that because everyone can see this is where I can be involved. It's not just showing up at meetings once a quarter. This is what I can do to actually make a difference. And that's what makes any board of directors, and that's what we are, any board of directors valid and meaningful is if when people know I can do something, because I can do something, I can see the impact, I'm going to give, and I'm going to tell everyone else too. It's as easy as that. What makes our employees excited to come to work? It's the same thing with an LFCC.
Yep. And
okay, I'm off my soapbox now.
Okay, so let me jump on Vince's soapbox with him. Exactly what he said is the reason that we're looking at combining the LFCCs. It is really hard to have a smaller LFCC and avoid burnout, and where you just feel like, you know, when you have a small LFCC, like Vincent, doesn't really matter what size the campaign is, there's a huge amount of work to be done. So it makes it really hard for everyone, you know, to be in their regular jobs and then also do LFCC work. The whole committee structure, I mean, and we've done that over the years to a large degree. If I can just get somebody to come in and help with like applications, you know, they may not ever be able to do anything else, but it's that many hands make light work, because there's a ton to do. So, and another thing with retirees, a lot of folks, I mean, Vince is talking a lot about social media. A lot of retirees that I know follow their old agencies or departments on social media. So that's another place that if you can, you know, get some support with your agencies and your federal departments, lots of times they're already posting social media messages reminding everyone that it's CFC time. So that's another place to potentially catch some retirees.
All right, we are going to actually stop the session at this point. Those great discussions. You know, thank you all for your input, for your dedication to being parts of the governing bodies of the program, because we simply can't run it without the federal employees in these positions. So we're going to pause here, and we're going to have our next session starting at 3 p.m. So we're going to give you all a little break. And we'll reconvene. You're welcome to stay on. You don't have to log out and come back in. And keep the questions coming. If you have any questions, you can still put them in the chat. We'll make sure it gets to the right person, and we'll connect you guys there. So thank you, and we'll see you at 3 o'clock.